imagine for a moment, just think about this. A world where every single crypto gain you make, every single profit from a trade that goes right, every time your portfolio surges, it stays 100% in your pocket,
Yeah.
untouched, just completely free from capital gains taxes. Now, for most of us, I mean, especially if you're listening from somewhere with traditionally high taxes, that
Yeah.
probably sounds like a bit of a fantasy, right? Like the ultimate dream for a digital asset investor.
It absolutely does sound like a dream. And you've really hit on something, well, fundamental there. Maximizing returns is obviously it's central to any investing, whether it's stocks or crypto. But the piece that often gets maybe not overlooked, but underestimated, tax efficiency. It plays this huge, sometimes decisive role. It really dictates how much of those returns you actually get to keep. And the difference between, say, 0% and 30, maybe even 40% tax, that's not just tweaking the numbers. It's a whole different financial reality.
And what if I told you that, well, for a growing number of people, and even some major crypto companies, this isn't a fantasy at all. It's very real, tangible, and it's actively shaping the future of Web3, like on a global scale. So that's our mission today. We're embarking on a deep dive into this fascinating world. We're calling it Crypto Tax Havens of 2025. We're going to explore 5 specific countries that right now stand out for their tax-free or at least very, very favorable policies on crypto gains. And then we'll, unpack the implications. What does this all mean? Not just for your wallet, but for global innovation, maybe even geopolitics.
Exactly. And we need to be clear here. We're not just talking about accidental loopholes or places where the rules are just unclear. We're talking about jurisdictions that are intentionally, very strategically structuring their tax and regulatory policies. And they have a really clear goal: attract crypto capital, draw in the best blockchain talent, basically become magnets for the entire Web3 ecosystem. It's a deliberate strategic play. You can see it unfolding. And honestly, it's working. It's diverting significant funds and expertise.
Okay, so to guide us through this, it's a pretty complex and frankly fast-moving landscape. This deep dive is mostly based on an excerpt from a really insightful text, Crypto Tax Havens of 2025.
Yeah.
But, we didn't just stop there. We've layered in a lot more. We've looked at global crypto tax reports from the big names like PwC and Deloitte, pulled in economic analysis from organizations like the IMF and the OECD, and crucially brought in real-time market data from analytics firms, Messari, Chainalysis. So it's a pretty comprehensive stack of info, gives us multiple angles.
Yeah, and that diverse stack is exactly what lets us go beyond just, listing countries. It helps us really get under the hood, understand the why and the how behind these shifts. We can look at the motivations of these nations, analyze, well, how effective are their strategies really, and maybe most importantly, figure out the measurable impact. What are these policies actually doing to capital flows, talent migration, and the whole direction of Web3? It's not just what's happening, it's the deeper forces driving it.
Exactly. So the core question for today, the thing we really want to explore is, what does tax-free actually mean in the crypto world? Like the nuts and bolts of it. Who really benefits most? Are there subtle differences between these havens? And, critically, how do these policies impact you, the individual investor? How do they influence this huge migration of capital we're seeing? And does it really fuel a new kind of geopolitical race for like digital leadership? Okay, let's unpack this. All right, so let's kick things off with the absolute core of this. When we talk about tax-free policies on crypto gains, what exactly are we talking about? It sounds amazing, maybe too amazing. What's the precise definition here based on our sources?
That's a really good place to start. And it's crucial because, yeah, tax-free can be a bit vague sometimes. In this specific crypto context, and our sources are pretty clear on this, we're talking primarily, almost exclusively, about zero capital gains tax, zero tax on the profits you make from buying, selling, or trading cryptocurrencies. Now, that's a key distinction. It doesn't automatically mean zero other taxes in that country. You might still pay income tax if you have a regular job there, or VAT on things you buy, maybe property tax. And sometimes specific things like, say, professional crypto mining or maybe staking as a large-scale business, those might get treated differently, maybe taxed as income. But for the typical person investing, seeing their assets grow and then selling for a profit, the key is 100% of that realized profit stays with them. No capital gains tax bite.
100%. Wow. That is a staggering difference. I mean, that must completely change how an investor thinks, right? Their whole calculation. And according to that Crypto Tax Havens of 2025 source, they've identified what they call the Big Five. The countries leading the pack this year, who are they? Which nations are offering these incredibly attractive conditions?
Right, so based on our research, looking across those reports from PwC, Deloitte, and others, 5 nations really stand out right now we're looking at. El Salvador, Singapore, the United Arab Emirates, particularly Dubai, Switzerland, and Portugal. And what's really interesting, if you step back and look at that list, it's a sheer geographical spread, isn't it? Central America, dynamic Asian hubs, the Middle East, which is developing incredibly fast, and, established European financial centers. But it's also the different ways they're approaching it, their underlying reasons. You've got established financial power, sure, with long histories of attract money. But then you've got emerging economies making these really bold, almost audacious plays in crypto to carve out a niche. Each one has its own mix of motivations, regulations, economic goals, even if the end result for individual capital gains is similar. Zero, or very close to it.
Okay, so we've got the definition nailed down, and we have the list, the big five.
Yeah.
But let's really dig into the so what factor here. Why do these policies matter so much? Not just for the person trading, but for the countries themselves and, the whole Web3 ecosystem. This is where it gets really interesting, I think, especially for individual traders or, say, Web3 builders.
Yeah.
What's the actual impact on them?
Well, tax policy, fundamentally, it's a huge lever for influencing behavior, right?
Yeah.
Economic decisions. So for someone who's crypto rich, or frankly, any investor with significant crypto holdings, the incentive to maybe relocate, or at least set up tax residency in one of these crypto-friendly places, it can be absolutely massive. Just think about the direct financial difference it makes. Imagine keeping all your crypto profits versus paying, what, a third, maybe more, to the government. It directly impacts your net worth, obviously, but also your ability to reinvest, to compound those returns over time. It gives people this freedom, this choice in how they manage and grow their wealth. And often it goes beyond just the money, right? It connects to lifestyle, professional opportunities too.
And just to really hammer that home, let's compare it directly. Say, somewhere like the United States. What kind of tax rates are we actually talking about there for crypto gains, just to see the contrast?
Oh, the contrast is stark. Yeah, the sources, especially the global tax reports, they really highlight this. In the U.S., federal capital gains taxes on crypto for high-income earners can go up to 37%. And that's before you even factor in potential state taxes, which can add quite a bit more in some places. So yeah, you could easily be looking at giving up well over a third of your profits. Now put that right next to a 0% capital gains tax situation. It's not a small adjustment. It's a huge financial pull factor. It makes considering offshore options, exploring different residencies, it makes it almost a financial necessity for some. The sheer size of that difference is a powerful driver for both people and increasingly companies. They're rethinking where to base themselves.
Right, so it's definitely not just individuals crunching the numbers. Does this also ripple out and affect bigger entities like companies, startups, maybe whole industries? Sounds like there's a much larger migration story unfolding here.
Absolutely. This is where that capital migration piece becomes really, really significant. Countries with these friendly tax rules, they don't just attract individuals with laptops. They pull in entire crypto ecosystems, the whole package. We're talking, innovative startups looking for clear rules and maybe lower costs, major crypto exchanges needing certainty and tax efficiency for their massive operations, venture funds looking for fertile ground where their investments can actually grow without being heavily taxed on exit. Even the core dev teams, the builders who want to be somewhere, their work is understood, welcomed, and optimally rewarded. So it's not just about saving tax for one person, it's about creating this environment where the whole industry can thrive. It drives real economic activity, jobs, the lot.
Can you give us a solid real-world example, like a big name making this kind of strategic move?
Yeah, sure. The one that comes up again and again in our sources is Binance setting up its headquarters in Dubai. I mean, Binance is one of the biggest exchanges globally, right? Their move to Dubai wasn't just, opening a small office. It was a very strategic, very deliberate decision. They wanted to leverage Dubai's regulatory environment, which is becoming clearer, and yes, the favorable tax situation. It involved moving significant operations, capital, key people. It's like Exhibit A for how a country's policy can successfully attract these global giants and all the economic activity that comes with them. It really signals that these major players aren't just looking for no rules. They're looking for clear, predictable, supportive rules. And low taxes help, obviously.
Okay, so this sounds less like friendly competition and more like a global race, almost cutthroat, with potentially pretty serious geopolitical side effects. What does this mean for the bigger picture, especially for countries that aren't playing this low tax game?
That raises a really important question, yeah. We are definitely seeing a significant geopolitical competition. Some call it a race to the bottom on taxes, but you could also frame it as a race for innovation leadership. As the more traditional Western economies, thinking US, EU, as they seem to be leaning towards more regulation and definitely heavier taxes on digital assets. Other nations are strategically using tax breaks as this incredibly powerful lure. And the big worry for the US and EU, the risk of a brain drain, losing the brightest talent, the most innovative companies, the most mobile capital in the crypto space, they just leave. And this isn't just about wealthy individuals protecting their assets. It's about nations competing for dominance in the digital economy of the future. If you're not competitive on tax and regulation for this sector, you risk falling behind. You don't just lose tax revenue, you lose the IP, the jobs, the whole future growth engine that Web3 potentially represents. You see mentions in IMF and OECD reports. There's definitely growing concern in G7 countries about tax base erosion and this flight of, well, intellectual capital.
They know it's happening. But directly matching a zero tax offer is politically tough for them. Still, the impact is undeniable.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, let's really get into the specifics now. Let's look at these big five one by one and see what makes each tick. We have to start with probably the most unique one, definitely the one that made the most noise initially, El Salvador. They went huge, adopting Bitcoin as actual legal tender. How does that incredible move connect with its tax status for crypto?
El Salvador is absolutely a one-of-a-kind case study. Our sources confirm this pioneering approach. Back in September 2021, they became the first country anywhere to make Bitcoin legal tender. And that move immediately combined with their existing policy of zero capital gains tax on crypto. So it's not just a tax break. It positions El Salvador as this holistic crypto haven. It's not only about keeping your profits if you trade Bitcoin, it's about potentially living in an economy where Bitcoin is just money. Used for groceries, paying taxes, everything. Integrated into the financial system through things like the state-backed Chivo wallet.
So it's way beyond just tax policy. It's like a full-on national experiment, a vision for a Bitcoin-based future.
Exactly. It signals a profound national commitment. The stated aims are things like boosting financial inclusion for people without bank accounts, attracting foreign investment, cutting remittance costs. The vision even includes ambitious projects like Bitcoin City, this idea of a tax-free city powered by geothermal energy from volcanoes. It's a really comprehensive embrace. But, it's definitely still an experiment. It faces real challenges. Getting widespread adoption, dealing with Bitcoin's volatility, infrastructure needs, even international relations, and getting funding. Still, for someone truly dedicated to living on a Bitcoin standard where your gains are yours and you can actually use BTC day to day, it offers something pretty unique. It makes you think, doesn't it? Considering a place where Bitcoin is legal money and your gains are tax-free, would you personally think about moving somewhere like El Salvador? It really forces you to weigh your priorities.
That is a really compelling question. For me, the legal tender part is intellectually fascinating, but yeah, I'd have to weigh the practical side of a full move. Okay, let's shift gears. Let's head east now to the UAE, specifically Dubai. They seem to be absolutely everywhere in the crypto news these days. What's their strategy? It feels multifaceted.
Yeah, the UAE and Dubai in particular, they've been incredibly proactive, very strategic. They are clearly positioning themselves to be the global crypto HQ, a top destination for anything digital asset related. And their strategy is broad. It's not just about attracting individuals, though they do that too. It's critically about pulling in the big institutions, the major exchanges, the venture capital funds. They've put a lot of effort into creating a regulatory framework that's clear, but also seen as progressive. You've got bodies like VAR, the Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority in Dubai, and the ADGM Financial Services Regulatory Authority in Abu Dhabi. Both are issuing specific licenses for different crypto activities, exchanges, custody, brokerages. This structured approach gives institutions the regulatory certainty they absolutely need.
And that links back to the Binance example you mentioned earlier, doesn't it? Sounds like they're building the whole package, the whole ecosystem.
Absolutely. The Binance HQ decision, it's not just a side story. It's proof their strategy is working. It shows they can land the big fish. But it's not just Binance. Our sources confirm a clear, observable trend. Major crypto firms, blockchain startups, Web3 VCs, they are relocating significant parts of their operations, sometimes their entire HQs, to the UAE. They see it as this attractive hub. Predictable rules, favorable taxes, good infrastructure. And this crypto push is part of the UAE's bigger picture, right? Diversifying away from oil, becoming a leader in future tech. They offer things like economic free zones, great digital infrastructure, a very welcoming environment for international talent. It's a comprehensive package designed to be a magnet for the whole industry.
Okay, so from the, let's say, the ambitious newcomer to maybe the established veteran, let's look at Switzerland. It's had this long reputation for financial innovation, stability, discretion. How does it fare in the crypto tax world, especially with these energetic new players on the scene?
Switzerland, and yeah, especially the canton of Zug, the original crypto valley, it's been a major hub for blockchain for years, really, even before this latest massive boom. What's really notable there is the combination of factors. Yes, favorable tax treatment in certain cantons is key, but it's also their mature, generally progressive, and crucially clear regulatory environment. They tackled blockchain legislation early on, providing legal certainty. FINMA, their financial regulator, offers things like a specific fintech license. This clarity is incredibly valuable for businesses and investors. Now, on the tax side, it's a bit nuanced. In cantons like Zug, crypto held by individuals might be treated as movable private wealth, which means if you're not classified as a professional trader, the profits from selling it might not be subject to capital gains tax. It's treated more like selling, say, personal art or jewelry.
So it's not always just a blanket zero tax, but more about the legal classification and clarity. Stability seems key there.
Exactly. That's often Switzerland's main appeal, compared to some newer places that might just shout zero tax.
Yeah.
Switzerland offers this established legal framework, political stability, a world-class financial services sector, neutrality. It's a whole package. You've got the Crypto Valley Association actively fostering the ecosystem too. Switzerland's evolution shows how an established financial power can stay relevant, even lead in the crypto space. They do it by providing that robust, predictable, stable environment alongside favorable tax rules. It really underlines that for many, especially institutions and long-term projects, stability and clarity can be just as important as the lowest possible tax rate.
Okay, let's swing back to Asia. Singapore,
Okay.
another major economic force. Known for being quite strict with regulations, right? Very focused on financial integrity. How do they square that with being considered a crypto haven?
Singapore's approach is really fascinating. It's this dual strategy, and they execute it very effectively. On one side, yes, they are known for robust financial regulation. The Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, is very proactive. They focus on market integrity, protecting investors, fighting money laundering. This makes institutions feel secure. For instance, MAS brought in the Payment Services Act. It provides really clear licensing rules for what they call digital payment token, or DPT, service providers. So if you're running an exchange, or a crypto payment firm, or custody services, you know exactly what rules you need to follow. This clarity is a huge draw for compliant institutional players. But then, on the other side, for individuals, Singapore generally offers tax-free capital gains on crypto. Their overall tax system typically doesn't tax capital gains for individuals on investments, and crypto usually falls under that umbrella. The caveat is if you're seen to be trading crypto professionally, like it's your business, then it could be taxed as income. But for most investors, gains are tax-free.
Huh. So they managed to be both, like, really buttoned down and regulated for businesses, but incredibly welcoming for individual investors' profits.
Precisely. And that balance is Singapore's unique selling proposition, its strategic edge. It attracts the institutions who crave that regulatory clarity and stability. And at the same time, it pulls in individual investors looking for tax efficiency within a sophisticated, well-regarded financial center. This combination has really cemented its status as another key global crypto HQ. It perfectly demonstrates that being tax-free for individuals doesn't have to mean being a regulatory Wild West. Actually, for many serious players, that combination of clear rules and tax benefits is the absolute sweet spot for building something sustainable in Web3.
All right, our final country in the Big Five is Portugal. Now, this one generated a ton of buzz, didn't it? I remember hearing constantly it was the destination for crypto expats for a good while there.
Oh, absolutely. Portugal had this massive crypto expat boom. It was huge for several years. It became incredibly popular, attracting thousands of people, traders, digital nomads, early crypto believers, especially from other parts of Europe. Why? Well, sunny climate, great culture, EU membership. But the killer app was the tax situation. For a long time, Portugal essentially treated crypto gains for individuals as tax-free. This wasn't necessarily a specific law for crypto, but more how existing tax laws were interpreted. If you weren't deemed a professional trader, your gains weren't taxed, so it became this beacon. You could live in Europe, enjoy the lifestyle, and keep all your crypto profits.
I feel a butt coming. I heard things have changed significantly. What's the latest there, and what can we learn from Portugal's journey?
Yes, there's a very important but. Our sources highlight partial rollbacks in 2023-24. Things have definitely evolved. The Portuguese government saw the huge influx, saw the maturing market, and decided they needed to adapt their rules. So while it's still relatively favorable compared to many countries, that blanket tax-free status is gone. Since January 2023, Portugal now generally applies a 28% capital gains tax on crypto assets held for less than 1 year.
However, and this is key, gains from crypto held for more than 365 days generally remain tax-exempt, aligning it with how they treat some other long-term investments. Also, professional activities, like running a trading business or mining, are now clearly subject to income tax. So it raises that big question for investors. Is Portugal still the haven it was? Has the shine worn off a bit? I think this case study is incredibly valuable. It shows how volatile these policies can be. It's a stark reminder that investors need to stay really informed. What's true today might not be true tomorrow. Governments adapt, they balance attracting innovation with needing revenue. Portugal is proof that these haven statuses aren't necessarily permanent.
Okay, so we've looked at the specifics. We're seeing these distinct hubs emerge: Dubai, Singapore, Zuging in Switzerland, alongside countries like El Salvador making these big national bets. What does this all mean for the bigger picture? For the Web3 space overall, beyond just, lower tax bills for some people?
Well, it signifies a really profound shift, I think, in where global influence and innovation are concentrating. These aren't just random dots on a map anymore. They are becoming genuine new centers of gravity for the entire Web3 industry. They're pulling in not just the money, as we've talked about, but also the crucial ingredients for future growth. The talent, the intellectual property, the infrastructure needed to build the next generation of Web3. This is where the cutting-edge stuff is happening now, where new protocols get developed, where innovative dApps get built, where the big VC money is landing. It really represents a decentralization of innovation itself, in a way. Moving away, perhaps, from the traditional dominance of places like Silicon Valley or maybe London towards these new purpose-built crypto centers. Centers that offer that blend of regulatory clarity and financial incentive. It's fundamentally reshaping the map of where the digital future is being built.
You brought up brain drain earlier when we discussed the geopolitical angle. Can you elaborate a bit more on that, like the real impact on talent, especially in those countries with the heavier crypto taxes? What does that actually look like on the ground for individuals and for the economies they might leave?
Yeah, it's absolutely critical, and it's a genuine and I think escalating concern for those traditional economic powers. The U.S., countries in the EU,
Yeah.
they really do risk losing some of their best and brightest, their most innovative companies in this specific field. If you're a talented developer or a successful trader or a startup founder, and you can achieve a significantly better financial outcome, operate under clearer rules, find a more vibrant community somewhere else, increasingly the answer is, yeah, I'll go. Why wouldn't you? And this plays out differently depending on who you are.
Right. Can you maybe break that down? Like, how does it affect different types of people involved in crypto?
Sure. Let's think about retail traders. For them, the possibility of actually moving, setting up tax residency somewhere like Portugal or Dubai, it's a real practical option. They can directly optimize their finances with a plane ticket, essentially. Then you have the high net worth investors. For them, the incentives are just massive. We're talking about potentially shifting huge amounts of capital offshore. That impacts the tax base back home, yes, but also potentially investment capital, even charitable giving within their original country. It's significant wealth migration. Then think about digital nomads and Web3 developers. For this group, being able to legally keep 100% of their gains, that's almost the perfect scenario for their global location-independent lifestyle. They can base themselves wherever they want: beach in Portugal, mountains in Switzerland, bustling city like Dubai, knowing their primary source of wealth isn't being heavily taxed. And finally, you've got the startups and the blockchain companies themselves. They migrate not just for the founder's personal benefit, but strategically to attract global talent, to get funding more easily, to operate under clearer regulations.
This sheer mobility of talent, of capital, of innovation, it's a powerful force. And it's one that high-tax countries find really difficult to counter without fundamentally changing their own approach.
So that big question again, do you think the US and Europe are actively pushing innovation away with these heavier taxes? Or is it just, the natural ebb and flow of global finance finding efficiency? It's a tough one.
It is a tough one, and it's probably a mix of both. But the policy element is undeniable. The data we have from the sources, it strongly suggests a correlation. Tax policy is influencing where capital and talent move. Now, is global finance always seeking efficiency? Yes. But the deliberate policy choices by places like the UAE or Singapore to offer zero or near zero gains tax, that creates a very specific, very powerful competitive advantage.
Yeah.
It absolutely can divert innovation and talent away from places with higher taxes or more regulatory friction. Some might argue, oh, true innovation will happen anywhere. Maybe.
But that friction, the financial disincentive in high tax places, it definitely doesn't help. It's this constant tension, isn't it, between wanting to regulate, wanting to tax for public services, and needing to foster innovation in a critical future industry. It's not really an either, it's a spectrum, and policies have real consequences we can see.
Okay, this is fascinating. Our sources even mentioned something called crypto tourism. What on earth is that? Sounds kind of intriguing, maybe a bit cheeky.
Crypto tourism? Yeah, it's a relatively new term, but it speaks volumes about how mobile capital and talent have become. It basically refers to people, usually high net worth crypto folks, active traders who relocate, but maybe only short term, perhaps just for a portion of the year, typically just long enough to meet the minimum residency requirements of a particular tax haven. Why? Purely to leverage those tax-free advantages for a specific tax year. It's not necessarily about permanently moving house, setting down roots. It's a strategic, temporary residency. For instance, a country might require you to be physically present for, say, 183 days in a year to be considered a tax resident. So these individuals might carefully plan their travel, their accommodation, around hitting that threshold. They effectively visit the haven long enough to qualify for the 0% tax on their crypto profits for that year. What's really interesting is just how agile people are becoming, how responsive they are to global tax rules when their assets are digital and borderless. It's like a new kind of economic migration, driven solely by digital asset policies.
Wow. That's really something. Okay, this all seems incredibly compelling. The trends seem clear anecdotally. But how do we actually measure this? Are there concrete metrics, hard data points that really show this migration, these shifts happening, beyond just stories?
Oh, absolutely. The sources point to several key indicators. We can definitely quantify these trends and move beyond anecdotes. First, you could visualize it. Imagine a crypto tax policy map, a dynamic world map showing in real time which countries are tax-free, which are high tax, maybe different shades in between. That gives you an instant global snapshot of the competitive landscape. You could see policies changing over time.
Yeah, that would make it incredibly clear. Just see the hot spots.
Exactly. Then you have the really stark, simple comparisons, like the capital gains comparison U.S., up to 37%, versus tax-free countries, 0%. Yeah. Just putting those numbers side by side dramatically highlights the financial incentive. It shows the sheer scale of the potential saving, the ROI on relocating. But beyond that, we can actually track the money and the companies. We can look at on-chain flows by region. Using aggregated, anonymized data from firms like Chainalysis, you could literally see where large amounts of crypto are moving. Are big wallets moving funds from, say, North America to exchanges based in Asia or the Middle East? That data exists. For example, I recall seeing Chainalysis data suggesting, I think it was for Q1 2024, something like a 15% jump in large transfers from Western Europe going into UAE-based platforms. That strongly suggests strategic reallocation, likely institutional. So yeah, we can follow the money.
Okay, so you can literally watch the digital money move across borders. And what about the companies themselves?
Precisely. And for companies, we look at metrics like exchange registration HQs and track corporate relocations. Where are the new crypto exchanges setting up their legal base? Where are established blockchain companies moving their headquarters? Historically, maybe many were incorporated in the US or parts of Europe, but now the trend highlighted in PwC and Deloitte reports is clearly towards Asia and the Middle East. I think one report mentions something like over 60% of new exchange registrations in the last couple of years happened in the UAE and Singapore. That's far outpacing growth in older financial centers. So you put all these metrics together, the policy map, the tax comparisons, the on-chain flows, the corporate HQs, and they paint a very clear data-driven picture. It's objective evidence of this migration of capital, talent, and infrastructure happening right now, reshaping the global map because of these tax policies.
Okay, let's talk about the label itself. Tax haven. It sometimes carries a bit of a negative vibe, doesn't it? Makes you think of secrecy, maybe shady dealings. So is this whole movement genuinely about fostering innovation, building real ecosystems, or is it mostly just about attracting money that's trying to avoid taxes? That feels like a really critical distinction.
It is a critical distinction, and it's a debate these countries themselves are very aware of. It's something they have to navigate carefully. Clearly, they are attracting significant capital. The question is about intent and substance. Are they just providing a loophole, a place to park wealth with minimal questions asked? Or are they actively building something sustainable, an innovative ecosystem with clear, transparent rules, even if those rules are very favorable? Organizations like the OECD, they have criteria for assessing jurisdictions, things like exchanging tax information automatically, having transparency standards. And countries like Switzerland and Singapore, they work hard to meet these international standards. They want to differentiate themselves from the traditional idea of an offshore haven. They emphasize their regulatory clarity, the legitimate economic activity happening there.
But yeah, there's always that potential reputational risk. If a country is seen only as a place for tax avoidance, without fostering real innovation or contributing positively, it could face international pressure or scrutiny. The detailed progressive frameworks you see in places like Zug or Singapore, they suggest a genuine effort to build something real. Other places might face more skepticism about their long-term goals.
And thinking about the long term, we saw Portugal roll back some of its benefits. That makes you wonder, are these haven statuses actually sustainable? And what about the bigger picture? Could stricter global rules emerge, maybe from the OECD or G20, trying to harmonize things and potentially shut down some of these big advantages?
That really highlights the inherent volatility, doesn't it? The whole landscape is dynamic. While individual countries are fiercely competing right now using tax as a weapon, you're right. International bodies like the IMF, the OECD, their papers show increasing discussion about harmonizing global crypto tax rules. Why? Because they worry that this fragmented approach, this race to the bottom, could lead to what they call regulatory arbitrage, where companies just hop to the easiest place. They worry it could create instability, maybe undermine the tax bases of major economies. So the future isn't set in stone. Policies do change. Portugal is the perfect example. A country might be the hot new haven today, enjoying that edge, but tomorrow, they could face international pressure, or maybe just decide internally they need the revenue, or that the policy isn't working as intended. For anyone making long-term plans based on these policies, you have to be acutely aware. This isn't guaranteed forever. Continuous monitoring is absolutely essential. It leads to that big question looking ahead. Are these tax havens really the blueprint for future Web3 hubs?
Or will we eventually see stricter global standards emerge, consolidating regulation and maybe leveling the playing field, closing some loopholes? What do you think?
It's a huge question. So ultimately, for these countries, it's this constant, really tricky balancing act they're performing, trying to weigh the pros and cons.
Absolutely. It's a classic economic and political tightrope walk. How do you attract all this exciting innovation and investment without totally undermining your traditional tax base from other industries? Or, as we said, without facing accusations from other countries that you're engaging in unfair tax competition? And beyond that, these economies making big bets on crypto, they also have to think about their own long-term resilience. What happens if there's another major crypto winter? How does that impact the capital they've attracted? How vulnerable are they to future policy changes from, say, the EU or the US? Think about El Salvador. Its economic fortunes are now quite closely tied to Bitcoin's price performance. Switzerland has amazing stability, but the cost of living is a huge barrier for many individuals and startups. Portugal, as we saw, found that even popular policies sometimes need adjusting. It's a really high-stakes game they're playing, with potentially huge long-term consequences for their own economies and their place in the world. Hashtag hag outro.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground today. Really dived deep into this world of crypto tax havens. We looked closely at the Big Five for 2025, El Salvador, the UAE, Switzerland, Singapore, and Portugal. We've seen how their different policies aren't just about letting individuals keep more profit. They're actually driving these huge global shifts in capital, influencing where talent moves, and genuinely sparking this intense geopolitical race for leadership in Web3.
Indeed. The impact of tax policy here, it's just profound. You really can't overstate it. It dictates where innovation clusters, where investment flows in the digital asset world. It's this powerful, maybe sometimes underestimated force that's actively redrawing the global economic map. It creates new centers of power, challenges the old ones, and really highlights just how agile and responsive both capital and talent have become in this digital age.
So wrapping up, let's bring it back to you, the listener. Considering everything we've unpacked today, these fascinating shifts in global finance, regulation, innovation, if you had the choice, if you could legally keep 100% of your crypto gains, which of these countries would you pick to build your Web3 future in, and why?
And maybe an even bigger question to ponder, what does this ongoing geopolitical competition, this race for crypto talent and capital, what does it ultimately mean for the core idea, the very ethos of decentralization that supposedly underpins this whole Web3 movement? As governments increasingly compete to attract and perhaps control aspects of this ecosystem, how does that square with the original vision of a permissionless, borderless digital world? Definitely something to mull over as you navigate the constantly changing landscape of digital assets.